Welcome. Welcome to Wharton Moneyball. Welcome to a full hour of sports analytics here on the Wharton Podcast Network. This is Cade Massey hosting this week with my two longtime collaborators and friends, Jensen and Eric Bradlow, both of those fellows in Philadelphia. I am remote, as I typically am these days. We are recording on Tuesday afternoon. This show will go up on Wednesday. We're going to follow our usual schedule, the schedule for the last couple of years anyway. Going to go with a guest in the first half hour, open it up for broader topics in the second half hour. We have a brand new guest this time. We're often welcoming people back, and we're always happy to have people back, but we need to have new guests as well. We have Tyrel Stokes joining us this week. Tyrel is from the hockey world. I happened to be hanging out with some hockey types a few weeks ago, and they said, you got to get Tyrel Stokes on the show. And so, okay, here we go. I listen to these guys. Tyrel Stokes is supposed to be about as sharp as it gets analytically in the world of hockey. Tyrel's coming to us from Teamworks. Before that, Zealous. You've heard us have lots of guests through here on Zealous before they were acquired by Teamworks. They work with teams, both professional and college level. Hockey is going to be much more professional level. Tyrel's background, he's from the Canadian prairies. We just learned he's from outside of Edmonton. So he and Shane are going to be going at it about their Alberta loyalties here before the day's over. Tyrel's a statistician by training. He has a PhD in causal inference from McGill, another connection to Shane. Postdoc at NYU. He's done academic research, hospital network data, that kind of thing. But he's been doing hockey for these last few years. He's up there in Brooklyn, New York. Tyrel, we're delighted to have you. Thanks for making time for us.
Yeah, really excited to be here.
Why don't we start off by just asking your reflections on the Stanley Cup playoffs so far? We are almost 2 rounds through. One of the 4 series is done. We've seen some hockey, having some winnowing. Just what's top of mind? You as a hockey fan, you probably think analytically anyway, but I'm not anything specific. Just like as a fan of the sport, what have you noticed? What are you paying attention to over the last few weeks?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, we're definitely in this kind of, it's interesting the timing of the series. Of some still going, some already finished, like some really big breaks. That's obviously interesting. I think NHL playoffs is really one of the cruelest of like the playoffs like series across sports. Like just being, you can be really good and you might not win. Like whatever, like maybe 20% of the time the best team is going to win or something like that.
Wow.
And so that's been really tough to see. You can see some series where, you got outplayed and you still won or vice versa. Excited to see, I know you guys had Eric Tulsky on. Exciting to see that team break through. I think they've been one of the better teams in the league recently, and obviously exciting as an analytics person. I think that's really cool to see a team that's clearly stewarded by those analytical minds. And I think they've just had a couple tough, I think Eric was talking about last time, they've had a couple of tough playoff series in the last few years, very, very good teams. And so cool to see them get that kind of success. But, also knowing the playoffs, who knows how long, that luck will go, even if they are playing really well.
Tyrel, let's stop there for a second. Tyrel's talking about the Carolina Hurricanes, and they are already through their second series. They haven't dropped a game in the tournament so far. They're 8-0. I don't think there's only 5 teams or something like that have opened that strong. So they're looking good. The Avs were almost looking as strong. They still are really. They've dropped 1 game, I think. They're up 3-1 now on the Wild. They started out behind last night. I was getting on the bus. I was going up the steps to get on the Minnesota Wild bus, and then they came roaring back and ended that, and that series is probably over. But the Avs, Hurricanes look very strong out of the East. How are you feeling about the Avs? I mean, all season long, we kind of thought they were the top, right?
Yeah, I think they're a really solid team. 5-on-5, it's hard to come up with a better team. I guess the power play is one of those ones where you look at the power play and it feels like it should be even better than it is. Just when you think of those, the talent that they have. But yeah, obviously I really like that team. Really a lot of exceptional players, a lot of really good puck movers, a lot of good puck carriers, good skaters.
Tyrel, when you watch a game, after the game, do you have a go-to set of analytics that you review to kind of understand what you saw? I often want that. I don't know exactly where to go. I sat through the game 6 of the Pens Flyers, where the Pens seemed like they just beat the hell out of them, and then they lost at every period that went along, including overtime. They were just really outplaying them more and more, and then they lost on a heck of a shot from the blue line practically. And I wanted to go somewhere and say, someone tell me how bad that was that team just lost that game. Do you have that set of analytics that you can lean on after a game to kind of better understand? And what goes into that set of analytics for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Definitely Pens Flyers was one of those series that I was following closely. Um, we've actually like we have a number of like game reports that I like look at like and that we generate sort of automatically in some cases, and a lot of it is pretty similar to what teams probably use of like you're looking at kind of overall like XG, kind of like who's dominating in XG, who's dominating in shots. We have some like lower level fancier stuff that's a little bit more tracking based, like who won in terms of like pressure as measured by something like an expected shot. Um, we're looking at like matchups. Something we've been playing with more recently, and it's like a new kind of game report that I've been looking at that I've found helpful for looking at games. We have like a system, we call it our like on puck value system. If you're familiar with other flow sports, it's basically like an EPV model. We built this one out to be to work on all event level games. So it's just so we can run it on multiple leagues, not NHL exclusive. And we found that kind of system is really helpful for getting a quick snapshot of like which players and which teams are dominating how. So like you kind of imagine the really important events in a game, like takeaways, passes, carries, loose puck recoveries, shots, finishing, about like 6 or 8 of these like important like actions on the ice. Every one of them we have sort of a value in terms of how much like XG did that add by this event. And you can do a number of things. So one, I just look at a bar chart of like which players like put their positive contributions on one side, their negative on another side, order them like among forwards, see where they ranked, each player ranked among all forwards in the game, among all defensemen in the game. And then you can kind of take those same categories and you can kind of say like which team won face-offs, which team won shots. And in these kinds of things to kind of get a quick sense of which team is doing better than others. And I found that really helpful. And in the case of the Pens, a lot of those games, it looked like from the underlying sense, the Pens were probably outplaying the Flyers.
Okay, Shane, let's give Shane the first question here. He's the hockey guy.
In these calculations, are you building in actual kind of positional data, like where into that calculation, or is it more just based on sort of the event data of like this person had possession and then this person had possession?
Yeah, so we have like multiple versions of those kinds of models. The one I was describing is mostly it's meant to work on like as many leagues as possible, so it's a little bit cruder where we don't have the location of all players. We have the location of like the puck and a little bit of context around it. We have similar models that we're sort of building out in the NHL space that is like specifically tracking based, that mirror some of the stuff that we've done in other sports, like say basketball, American football, international football, soccer.
Mm-hmm. So Eric was going to ask a question earlier on as well.
Well, no, I was going to ask Tyrel, how much, so let's say Teamworks presents, let's say it was even a team who's playing the Avalanche right now? Is it the Wild, you said? Mm-hmm. Let's say the Wild are playing the Avalanche. And Teamworks provides an analysis to the Wild that says, Colorado is killing you in the following 4 areas. How much can a team actually adapt its style to information given to it about the strengths of the other team? Or in some sense, after 82 games, after 7-8 games of the playoffs, you are what you are? Or do teams actually have, I'll call it, multiple versions of themselves? Like, we can play the fast style. We can play the style that draws penalties because we know we can't beat them 5-on-5. How much do you think about that when you're designing stuff at Teamworks, because you want people to actually be able to use it in some efficacious way?
Yeah, that's a good point. I kind of tend to think about in flow sports, kind of generally, there tends to be this kind of like pyramid of like, the lowest hanging fruit is just who's good. And then you try to ask like, why are they good? And then I think if you do a pretty good job of that, then you can start going to these like more like technical realms. I would say like hockey is pretty hard, I think, to be super useful tactically. And there's also a bit of a complication, I think, on our end of like, I'm not embedded with a team. So like
Right.
typically our approach has been to try to just give teams like tools that they can do some of that more specific stuff. Cause like a lot of them are not going to want to tell us like, oh, we were running this kind of thing on these games. And like, therefore like you're going to change it. And some of those like tactical stuffs are tough to, I think if we were to try to recognize, if our goal is to recognize tactics, like that would be the only thing we do.
So are you guys more of a licensed platform than you are a team contacts you and say, please do this analysis for us?
Yeah, like the bulk of what we have is like I think of it as like we create like foundational models that we give to teams that allow them to do more analysis. We also build metrics on top of those, and we provide the teams with those. But our really sophisticated users are using like lower level outputs from like really big foundational models of ours, and they're building their own like analyses on top of that, metrics on that.
Okay, hold on. Foundational models and lower level inputs from foundational models. So give us examples of what those are.
Yeah, so like two of them, I guess like the simplest like suite of like that listeners might be familiar of, like let's say like an XG model. So everyone is familiar with an XG model. We tend to call what we
expected goals in case there's a listener out there that doesn't have that. Okay.
Expected goals. We think of our XG offering as a framework. So it's really probably 25 or more models that are all strung together to make multiple valuations. So if you're like, most of the public XGs will have like, using all the information that they have in the public data set at the moment of shot, this is the value of it. Ours would look like, using all of the tracking information at the moment of shot, this is evaluation. Now, as that trajectory evolves, might be deflections, there might be multiple deflections, and so on, or just before and after the puck is released. Those are different information states, and they're going to create like multiple XG values. And then additionally, in order to make something like that, we need, let's say, the probability of every player on the ice redirecting the puck or blocking the puck, or so some of our clients are using, let's say you can use what we'd call like a post-shot XG. This is a concept we stole from soccer. So in soccer, where they have tracking data, you take before the shot, you take after the shot, you use the trajectory information. The difference between those says something about usually the shooter, like how talented is the shooter, or how are they imparting something on the ball. We have the same concept in hockey. We obviously have like metrics that we've developed to say like, who's really good at imparting really good trajectories on the puck, which is like certainly an aspect of shooting. So we make those metrics, but we also just give you the raw values. And some of our teams are much more interested. They're like, look, like we understand hockey better. Our coaches are interested in like very particular cases of like this redirection, that redirection, this shot, that shot. We can't possibly like anticipate all of the analyses or all of the things that a team is going to want. So like our approach is just like, I'll give you that. Like I'll give you the shot level redirection probabilities. I'll give you all of these different XG values as they develop across the shot. And sure, I also give you metrics, but like I want to empower like the coaches, the internal R&D staff to be able to do some of those more like tactical stuff themselves a little bit better.
Tyrel, that speaks to a question that comes up on occasion. In fact, even on the show, I think in the recent weeks, we've asked who's going to benefit the most, or some show, who's going to benefit the most from AI in sports? Who benefits the most from advanced analytics? Forget AI, just like zealous teamwork level analytics in hockey. It sounds like perhaps that kind of, it's not the entry level folks who don't have their own staff. And it might not be the totally built out folks who have huge teams doing it all themselves. Is it kind of the middle where they've got sophistication enough to already be there conceptually, but they want your inputs that they can process, they can further refine internally? Or how would you say, who benefits the most?
That might be right. Like, I think like, it's probably like from if I was thinking of like if I was trying to put like an economist hat on, it's probably is like the bottom, to be honest. Like if you basically have nothing built off, we have a bunch of like high level statistics and like, things for like drafting and stuff like that you could just plug and play tomorrow. Like going from zero to that, I think is like huge. the middle like I think does get a lot, obviously, because yeah, like those middle groups, like some of the metrics we create like just fully plug holes for them, but then also they have like new like data sets to play around with. um and then kind of at the top level, like I said, like they're probably more interested in these like lower level like features or like model outputs to like throw in their own stuff, or as like auditing purposes, like in a sport
Yeah,
like
right.
baseball where we work with teams that have 40 people like internal. Like sometimes they're hiring us because they want to just like make sure their internal stuffs are good, right?
Yep. Right. Right. How would you characterize the distribution of analytics sophistication in the NHL right now?
Like compared to other sports, or just like across like the
Just
different.
like these rough tiers that you just categorized, like roughly how many folks, how many teams in each tier?
Yeah, it's tough to say. Like we just had there was like a Halo conference that we helped organize at the beginning of April,
So
and
Tyrel, was
basically,
that the one that the Avs hosted in Colorado?
yeah,
That
the
seemed
Avs
really, really
hosted.
cool.
They worked together with SportLogic, which is now Teamworks. To I was involved a little bit on the reading some of the hackathon projects and things like that. And I think like something like 30 teams like sent somebody, and it seemed like every team had at least a couple people just there. So nowadays, like there's probably like 5 or 10 teams that are kind of like 2 to 3 people. And then maybe another like 5 to 10 that are in that, like maybe 5 to 15 that are in that like 3 to 5. And then you have a couple like really like strong groups that are in that like 5 to 10, maybe 10 plus in a couple cases.
Wow.
um,
Wow. Wow. Okay. They're really pacing, they're lapping everybody else on that case. Let me ask you a challenging question, Tyra. Say we're at some event and I happen to be with a couple of NHL execs, senior guys. They run a club. They're really deep on hockey. They've accomplished a lot on the ice and in the executive suite, but they're not analytics forward. And we happen to bump into you and we share an elevator going up or down, and you've got like a minute. And I introduced you. So I said, tell her, why don't you pitch these guys not on Teamworks per se, but on analytics, because they're curious, but they're skeptical. And so you got a minute to pitch these senior guys on analytics for hockey.
yeah, I think there's kind of like two routes, and like I think the first one is probably like the safest, is like player evaluation of like hockey is a little bit like let's say soccer, where like there really is a lot of different leagues that are relevant to the NHL. Like there's a lot of players. Like there's what 600 players in the league, and then like of guys that are kind of marginal that are existing. You know, in they're in Swiss, they're in the NCAA, they're like a top junior. Like it's really like a large pool of players that are like possible value adds, like either today or tomorrow. In a way that like I think sometimes we have a hard time with, like let's say some basketball teams where like yeah, maybe your models are good, but like there's only 90 people that matter, and like I can watch their videotape. You know, I think like hockey is one of these sports where like there really is like a pool of a couple thousand, and like you probably can't watch all of them. But what we can do is we can provide like a digital scouting report, and that's just going to be a first pass filter to like look, like ultimately you guys are the hockey guys. There's some guys that our model is going to say like he's a hot shot in NCAA, and maybe he sucks, and your scout, if he's good enough, maybe can say that. But we don't want your scout wasting time like looking at the wrong set of people. And then I think with like tracking data, like nowadays, like you can get metrics that are a little bit more in the language of a hockey player. Like you can clue in on something, like I can show a pass value. I can say like, I value this pass like this much. It's like this percentile. And I'm taking in enough context that like it passes the eye test in a way that like, I think lower level stuff, even though I think in the aggregate, working off lower level data is often really powerful. But we've always had a hard time with like coaches or more traditional hockey people, because they look at the video and they say their eyes are seeing information that your model isn't, and they're like, well, this is wrong. And I think with like the kind of tracking stuff we have now, there's more and more metrics that we can like point to and just say, well, like, well, look at that. Like, does this list not look like the 10 best passers? Like, do these passes not look like, really good passes or really good carries? Like,
Mm-hmm.
the more we're able to zoom in on these kind of micro
Mm-hmm.
things, like the closer it tends to get to the hockey language, I think.
Super interesting. It makes a lot of sense. The way you just talked about that raises a new question in my mind, especially as a person. I've watched hockey for a long time, but I've never played hockey, and I'm definitely handicapped in that way. As I'm watching games, how should I think about where a player adds value? You just talked about through passing, for example, and some of the passing, good passes are so fantastic in hockey. But let's just stay with like forwards. So how much of the value a guy creates on the ice during a game, XG or whatever, comes from shots, comes
like
from
off puck versus
the
on
puck,
puck activities,
off puck, or good passes, receiving passes well, recovering loose pucks. Like if you just give me some activities that maybe as an unsophisticated viewer I miss, that this guy's actually he has more chances to pass well than he does to shoot. Yeah. So give me some sense of that.
Yeah, I love that question. I think especially when we've looked at this in kind of our broader models that are trying to encompass as many leagues as possible, it often ends up getting like the things that you do like with and near the puck is probably about half, like as best as we can tell. And, that number is probably a little bit off. And like, as you sort of add, as soon as we get like, let's say like stick location values and like these kinds of things from like Hawkeye coming in, maybe those percentages will change. But right. I think like your passing, shooting, loose puck recovering, carrying, shot blocking, takeaways, like it's probably close to half. Wow. It might be a little bit more for forwards than defenders. I think defenders are a little bit tougher. But that's typically when we try to like blend like a micro and a macro stat to get something overall, it's often closer to 50-50 than you'd probably think.
Okay, but that's like shockingly high percentage for off puck behavior to the uninitiated anyway. And so give me one off puck behavior that I could try to monitor a little bit that's high value, and give me one on puck behavior that's not obvious. Like among all those things you named, what's something that's especially high value, or maybe it's high frequency or whatever, that I might need to pay more attention to?
Yeah. So one of the like maybe an off puck kind of thing. Like there's some defenders that are really good at just like reducing like pass threat. In whether or not they're like on the defender or not. There's like pretty good evidence of like a lot of those guys that have that defensive reputation, like a Jacob Slavin for Carolina. Somebody I'm being in New York, I've watched like a decent number of Islanders games this year. And like Adam Pelech is one of these like defenders that like, no matter how I slice it on the defensive side of the puck, he's really incredible. And like one of those things, like when I'm watching an Islanders game, like I'm always like, what are you doing, Adam Pelech? Like what exactly are you doing? And it's hard to see. And like, I think I'm surprised that like I'm watching his positioning and I'm like, whoa, like he feels out of position to me. And then all of a sudden he's like there to stop a play. So I think that's one of the ones like of an off puck behavior. Maybe on puck, like something that surprised me. It's maybe obvious in hindsight, but you being the person that is like recovering loose pucks, like is extremely predictive. It's one of those things that like one of the things that I always try to look at when I'm thinking about how predictive is a statistic. I really care about how does this translate across teams. And how does this translate if I was to take those players that get like swapped, if they're in completely new context, like how predictive is it? Yeah. And something like loose puck recovery, like if you're on a good team, if you're on a bad team, if you're in NCAA, like whatever, you're in the NHL, like the guys that get a lot of value out of that, like it's extremely predictive. Somebody that's like incredible, like Celebrini. I was watching him in the whole like Olympics and like, I don't know how he does it. Like, he's not that much bigger than I am. And like, he's just able to grab pucks and they're just on his stick. And like, it's so valuable. Yeah.
So, yeah. I was about to ask like what behaviors lead a guy to be able to get the puck like that? I would think that some of that is effort, but you just made it sound it's also stick.
There's like some really like impressive anticipation stuff. Like, yeah, if you watch like, I feel like I didn't play the game that long ago, but like sometimes when I watch NHL, it's really in the future, especially with like things like shootouts and then like things with like takeaways. There's these really subtle like lifts and like people are faking each other out, like making it look like they're going to take the puck one way and they're grabbing it the other, or they're out anticipating like really impressive stuff these days in terms of the skill level.
All right. Well,
can I ask Tyrel just a quick question? I was thinking about this when Cade asked you about, what you would say to, whether it's a CEO or someone that works for a hockey team. Would you hire more data engineers or data scientists?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because it sounds like there's extraordinarily rich data that's in even the Teamworks pipeline, but without a set of data engineers, I'm not sure what we as data scientists would do with that data. But on the other hand, they can do a lot of description, but if you want to build predictive models or think about something you studied, causal inference, then you might need a statistician. So I'm just interested how you think about that.
Yeah, definitely one of the theses of how we set up our product is we take care of as much of the data engineering as possible to make that to make the data accessible. We do a lot of mapping, cleaning, re-representing. If you want to work with it at a smaller level, a higher level, join in features. We try to do a lot of that for teams because I think you're right. If you want to be at the bleeding edge of statistics at this point, we're about to get Hawkeye data is, it's something like 36 join angles, 100 times a second. We got it in basketball about a year ago. The size of just one game is massive, and if you really want to be able to use that properly, you need biomechanists, you need data engineers, but it's kind of true. Once you have some kind of a pipeline in place, there's just so many more analyses that are possible. But I think probably the data engineering, I think a lot of us that are decent data scientists in this space have had to be kind of scrappy and had to learn. That's something that Doug Faring likes to say a lot. The former CEO of Zealous, now at Teamworks, is the best way to become a better data scientist is become a better data engineer, especially in the sports world where you have to be pretty scrappy and you're going to have to do some stuff a little bit outside of your role.
Has AI helped? Because it helps me be a better data engineer.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there are ways in which this kind of technology, if you're strong technical in one field, you can sometimes, it can help with that domain transfer problem a little bit. You still have to learn stuff, but I think there's definitely ways in which that can be true.
Tyrel, you mentioned that hockey's about to get Hawkeye data, and that will open up all kinds of biomechanical as well as finer positioning. What's an example of a question you're curious to tackle with these new data? What's something you think we're going to be talking about 2 years from now because of the data?
It's probably not as exciting as you might want, but we just don't know where the sticks are. And that's really, it turns out it's probably a pretty big part of hockey. And
right.
We have these spatial locations and we can say if two players are close, but we don't have. One of the things that is kind of a bummer is we only have one RFID chip in the NHL on the right shoulder.
Yeah.
NFL has two, so we don't have body orientation. I don't even know when a player is skating backwards. So I really want to know who's good at skating backwards. I just want to know where the sticks are. Just starting at major events, where are the sticks, and just that is going to give you much better expected goals models. It's going to give you a lot of stuff for free a little bit.
You could infer that maybe, Tyrel, right? But I mean, in the sense of if you had a supervised machine learning model where you human coded people skating backwards, I would imagine the movement of the RFID chip would have to be, even though it's only on the right shoulder, would have to be different than forward movement. And so in theory, you could infer this, right?
Absolutely. You must have been talking to Doug because we're very close to going down that pipeline and kind of realizing that Hawkeye was probably closer than we originally thought. It was one of those things that made sense to defer. But we sort of thought about one of these hidden Markov type models where it's kind of what you're saying is there's probably moments in time where I know for sure a player is going forwards or backwards, plus some of these movement stuff. I should be able to chain it together some way and get a probability. And that would probably help quite a lot, to be honest, in some of these models.
Tyrel, we're going to have to let you go. Thanks for making time. Oh, I assume you're an Oilers fan. You grew up in Edmonton. Does that make you an Oilers fan?
Yeah, I grew up an Oilers fan.
What's the prospect for McDavid the next few years? I got on the Oilers train the last few years, which is just a cheap, easy thing to do as a let's watch the most exciting team. But what's the future for McDavid? Did they miss the playoffs? No, they got knocked out.
No, they They took a step back this year, I think it would be fair to say. But
and McDavid, like, it seems like he, you know, had like some kind of injury during the first round, like with like the foot, which I think was fairly apparent in some of the reports that I was like looking at. I was like, oh, these don't quite look like the normal McDavid numbers. I was definitely thinking that was quite likely. I don't know. Like, I mean, I like the team. Like, I think they have, you know, some of their depth players I think are a lot better than people give credit to. I like Evan Bouchard. I know that's like something, but I think he's like a really excellent passer. He's like one of the best stretch passers in the league and has been for probably 3 or 4 years. I think, like, you know, they're a team that, like, if McDavid and Draisaitl are playing at their absolute limits, like it's really hard to count them out. And I think like I'm interested to see where that team goes anyway.
Okay. Well, we should let you go. All right. Tyrel Stokes, senior manager at Teamworks Hockey Analytics. I think you head the hockey operation at Teamworks.
I'm on the technical side anyway. Yeah.
Great. And first time guest. We're delighted to have spent some time with you. Good luck with all you're doing, Tyrel.
Thank you, y'all. Thanks for having me.
That has been the first half of Wharton Moneyball. We still have a half to go. Come back and join us after the break. Welcome back. Welcome back to Wharton Moneyball. Welcome back to a full hour of sports analytics here on the Wharton Podcast Network. Cade Massey hosting with Eric Bradlow and Shane Jensen. Our fourth musketeer, Adi Wyner, out and about doing Adi Wyner things. He'll be back. Some combination of us are here almost every week of the year, maybe 50, possibly 50 of the 52 weeks of the year, and have been for more than 12 years. Just off the line with Tyrel Stokes, first-time guest Tyrel Stokes, highly recommended, referred by experts, Tyrel Stokes, talking hockey analytics. Great fun. Yet another great hire by Zealous. Continue to be impressed with those guys, even after being acquired by Teamworks. Shane, missed you last week. Didn't get to talk about hockey with you. Anything?
Yeah, I mean, the Flyers have risen and fallen, and all in the intervening time. It's very. It was probably
inevitable,
kind of somewhat as inevitable as hockey gets, I suppose, in the playoffs, which is not very inevitable. But the Hurricanes have been an absolute wagon.
Yeah,
this post. I think I saw that it's the first time there's been two they've started out with 2 series sweeps since like the 80s, like since the Oilers in the 80s.
Jeez.
So anytime you're invoking a Gretzky,
wait, you're saying no one has had 2 series sweeps since the 80s
in a row to start the playoffs?
The first 2.
Yeah.
And I think it's and I think actually
that's actually a remarkable statistic because we have one in basketball this year, obviously as well, the OKC Thunder, and I'm sure I know for a fact it's happened 11 times in basketball, I believe. No one's ever finished this. No one has ever gone, that was the famous Moses Malone thing. We're going to go faux, 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 faux. They didn't. They went faux, 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 3-1 or 4-1. But no one in basketball has ever done it. But I think that talks, I assume you would agree with the randomness in hockey. Like, you could be the 0.8 team and you know what? You're not winning every one.
That's right. No, I think, it's created an interesting dynamic in this playoff too, because, Carolina is done with their, I think I counted, if the Buffalo-Montreal series goes long, and it easily could, those teams are really going at it with each other. I think they could have like a 10-game layoff or something like that.
Yeah.
Which, you could argue, of course, whether you would want such a long layoff or not.
Come on, you got it. But it's just is it the perfect mid-playoff break? Are you kidding me? 2 series in, 2 series to go. Let's take 10 days off, get rested, because it's such a grind, these 4 playoff series. It's got to be, maybe it cost them the first game with the Canadiens. Maybe it cost them the first game. I think that's got to be worth it to take this much time off in the middle.
It's not necessarily going to be the Canadiens, my friend. Your Sabres are still in it.
They've not,
at least until they need to meet up with Carolina.
Exactly.
No, it is. It's an interesting playoffs because I feel like we've had some incredibly exciting series, but there are more than I think most years, like these 2 elephants hanging out in either side of the room, basically, kind of waiting there. It's hard not to script yourself into an Avs Hurricanes final, even though we've got some amazing hockey along the way.
I forget who does this is the Micah McCurdy, right? The
McCurdy,
database.
we have.
So I'm looking at what you posted, or I assume it was you that posted it here. And just for our listeners, like, I don't know how to describe it, but to say that most of the probability mass, I don't want to say 90+%, but at least is on Colorado and Carolina.
Yeah,
and
I think when you say 82%.
It's hard to squint. Like, I have to squint to see the other lines at the end. And, my middle son's girlfriend is a huge Ducks fan. And I'm like, are they still in it? Like, I'm trying to, I know they are, but I'm trying to find them at the end of the rainbow here. And like,
no, and I mean, he produces these visualizations every year. They're really cool. And I do feel like this one is kind of, again, that it speaks to the unusual year I think we have where, two teams really do kind of soak up so much of the percentage, and they're both on either side of the bracket, so it's not like they're kind of soaking it up from each other. Because I think somehow if you were to kind of like, if you somehow were to substitute maybe Carolina and Minnesota, like move the Wild over to the East and get Carolina out of the East, I'm not sure the Wild aren't like suddenly one of the top two teams to make it. I think it is. I think it's kind of like it's more kind of consolidated in a couple teams than it usually is. Whether that'll actually realize or not, I mean, again, another test of how random it can get in hockey playoffs. It'd be cool to.
That's right.
It'd be cool if another team. Though I would be fine. Avalanche Hurricanes would be such an amazing final. I'd sign up for that.
Okay, well, trying to enjoy the process as well along the way, except for the Sabres getting blown out. Other than that, it's been a delight. Why don't we jump into what caught your eye? Let's do a couple of rounds. Let's see if we can do a couple of rounds of what caught your eye in the world of sports. Eric, probably the right place to start us off.
Well, I'll go back to a slightly different sport, which is tennis. Obviously, Alcaraz is still injured. Sinner hasn't lost in forever. And I don't know when the next time he's going to lose. I mean, he's going through top 20 players, 6-love, 6-1, 6-1, 6-2. I'm not talking about beating top 20 players. I'm talking about beating top 20 players. His odds right now for the French, which is coming up, not now, they're still playing the Italian Open. The French is starting after that. He's minus 270, which probably puts him at about 70%. And I'm wondering if that's too low. I checked. The highest Nadal ever was just, it's good to benchmark, was minus 400. Now, at that time, I don't know if he was the 5-time champion, 8-time champion at that point. But, let's put that as an upper bound. It's hard to imagine anyone being better than Nadal in his prime at the French. There's no legitimate probability model that would put somebody better, except this gets to Shane's point with hockey. There ain't no Federer and there ain't no Djokovic sitting there who could possibly beat him. So it's not unreasonable to say Sinner could be minus 500. Why can't he be? Nadal had different competition. I'm not saying he's better. I'm saying he doesn't have the same level of competition. So that's what caught my eye. I think minus 270 is too low. I think unless he gets injured, I think he's got a better chance.
I was about to ask, what's the base rate of injury? Because that's going to put a ceiling on the odds.
I mean, getting injured within a tournament is not as high as you'd think. Players typically, once they start tournaments, it's rare that they lose or pull out due to injury. So that's not as common. Now, the fact is Alcaraz is not playing. It's not even clear Djokovic, he's listed as he's playing, but he was just beaten in the first round by number 300 in the world. So he may be playing, but he's not really playing. Okay. I don't see how he's not more. Anyway, that caught my eye. I was like, minus 270 actually be too low.
I got kind of almost a tennis design question for you, Eric. If I wanted it to be less dominant, if I wanted to kind of change a rule or two in tennis so that maybe the best player wasn't so kind of high, to basically reduce the probability of the best player, or maybe even to kind of add randomness essentially so that it's not so, the best player winning all the time. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a goal you would want, but if you wanted that as a goal, what would you do? What do you think
Very simple. Okay. I mean, you could do stupid things say every game is 1 point. I don't mean that. Let's forget stupid things like that.
No, of course.
Something that has been talked about, make every round up until the finals best of 3. Like, you're not, I hate to say it, but with the condition he's in, look, it's one of those things that I always remember when my middle son was playing squash. You hit the ball about 10,000 times in a squash match. If the other guy's better than you, they're better than you. And, you can hit a bunch of winners, but not after 10,000 shots, you're not. Sinner right now hits the ball by far more cleanly than anybody else. You make it end big enough, he's going to beat you. So unless you shorten the match by making it best of 3 possibly, or change, for example, the rules within a game, which is unlikely. Tennis has been played this way for 70, 80, 100 years, whatever.
But like get rid of tiebreakers, for example, maybe.
Well, they've done that. They've done that now in the 5th set. Like if you happen to get to the 5th set, it's now the 1st to 10. It's not like, you remember when Isner, like the 40 to 48. They're not doing that anymore. They're not doing that anymore. Yeah. But no, right now, at best of 5, I just don't see it. I don't see how someone is going to beat Sinner in a 5-game match anymore. And because not only is he better than you, but he's in better shape than you, and he hits the ball cleaner than you, and his movement's better than you.
Do we expect Alcaraz back for Wimbledon?
It's unclear. I mean, yes, I would think so, but he's got an injured wrist. And, he says he's not coming back until he's fully 100%. I just saw a video of him yesterday. He is still wearing a brace on his wrist. So I don't know how close he is to being ready. And it's always one of those things. The good news it's not a good news. Let's take, I don't say worst case. Let's suppose Alcaraz is out for the rest of the season. I don't know that he is, but let's pretend he is for the moment, or he's not Alcaraz for the rest of the season. And Sinner wins the next 3 Grand Slams. So now he catches Alcaraz. So now they're both at 7. Is there an asterisk next to his career?
No. I think all these careers ought to be norm for their competition. We've talked about that before, but no, you're not going to.
I mean, maybe true aficionados like you look at Nadal, Federer's kind of list of Grand Slams and puts like, oh well, these were the years where Nadal was injured, and these were the years. Like, I mean, I
do. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong to do that, but certainly I think for kind of their overall like view, maybe outside of like somebody as deep in it as you, call me the casual fan. I make no decision. It'll just be the totals in the end.
Shane would be interested in a strength rating of a set of Grand Slams.
You show me the ELO rating, kind of all that type of stuff. That would be cool.
And by the way, except for situations like, let's take the rare cases like in baseball, like, Ted Williams went to war twice. Part of being great and having longevity is being able to be on the field. You can't contribute if you're not on the court. So if Alcaraz, look, people say this about Nadal. Nadal played way fewer Grand Slams than Federer or Djokovic. If he hadn't been injured. Okay, well, but if he didn't play the style he was, maybe he wouldn't have won 22 of them either.
Yeah. Let's go. And we're talking about Mike Trout in your favorite sport as well. Okay, Shane.
Well, okay, I feel like that is a good segue, because I feel like what caught my eye, obviously, Kyle Schwarber hitting all these home runs is what actually caught my eye. But, it got me thinking about kind of home run totals, and, just kind of there's a lot of players actually kind of this season specifically that are on track to go over 400 home runs.
I saw this. This is great.
It really kind of, I wouldn't necessarily use it as an absolute proxy for Hall of Fame worthy, but it's certainly, you get over 400 runs and you're starting to get in the mix of like where it's about 50-50 that you'd be in the Hall of Fame.
How many guys have more than 400 home runs in MLB history?
I'm going to guess 60, but I'll look it up.
Okay.
So anyway, the players right now. So Aaron Judge is only 16 home runs away, and that was from a couple days ago. So he's probably only 10 home runs away now.
Hey, that was so far off. It's 59.
That's a good guess,
Eric. Nicely done. But it really is kind of a list of sort of people at least on the fringe of Hall of Fame or definitely in the Hall of Fame. So Aaron Judge is only 16 home runs away from 400. Manny Machado's 25 home runs away. Bryce Harper's 27. Freddie Freeman's 29. So all these guys, we could have 4 or 5 players hitting 400, breaking that 400 mark all in the same season. There's a couple other players like Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado that are also kind of in that range, but they're more, the 4 players I mentioned are still, enough in their prime where I feel like they've still got like 20,
here you
30
go,
home run
Shane.
seasons.
This is a fun list. Here are all the players in MLB history with 400 home runs not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Okay? It's about 12 names. Here we go.
A lot of
Barry
juicers.
Bonds, we know why.
Yeah.
Alex Rodriguez, we know why. Pujols, not eligible yet. Sammy Sosa, we know why. McGuire, we know why. Palmeira, we know why. Manny, we know why. Gary Sheffield's an interesting case because he has 500 home runs, but he's off the ballot now. He's had his 10 years. Carlos Beltran, he's coming in. So he's coming into the Hall of Fame. Andrew Jones coming into the Hall of Fame. Jason Giambi. Paul Konerko.
Yeah.
Juan Gonzalez. The name I remember from my youth, Dave Kingman. Darrell Evans. Alfonso Soriano, and Mark Teixeira.
Yeah.
That's the list.
That is a short list. That is interesting.
Yeah,
Super
no, and I
interesting.
mean, again, it is a lot of obviously kind of suspected PED guys. I guess maybe with Soriano Teixeira, it's also if you hit a bunch of home runs on the Yankees. I mean, like, you know, whatever. I mean, that's not that notable. Those guys are supposed to do that.
So, guys, one thing that stands out to me is we're talking about, you know, in the next year or so, we're going to have these 5 active players.
Yeah.
Judge, Machado, Goldschmidt, Harper, and Freeman over 400. How often have there been, and there may be others who are still playing?
Yeah, I mean,
more than
Stanton's
400.
at over 500. So we've got active players that are already
So
over that.
are we at a relative high point for a number of active players with 400 or more home runs?
Not
There's only
relative
60
to
ever.
the early 2000s.
Well, forget those guys.
Yeah,
Forget those
right.
guys.
Take that out. Yeah, I think we are. I mean, I think, you know,
We're about to be.
residualizing LPEDs somehow. I think we're at kind of one of the highest sort of home run times.
Well, I guess that
in
would
baseball.
follow. Given, we're high. It's been a high home run.
Although I will
Era.
say there was an era where I'm just going to do this from memory, guys. Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Stan Musial, Ted Williams, Willie McCovey, Ernie Banks. So I could keep going.
Those weren't all the same era, though.
No, you mixed eras.
No. They were. A lot of them played in the 50s.
I mean, Ted Williams and Hank Aaron, did those guys really overlap?
They did. Ted
Maybe
Williams
by
played.
like
Of
one
course they did.
season.
No. 5 seasons.
Really?
Ted Williams'
What?
last season was
Really?
Ted Williams' last season was 1960. Willie Mays' first season was 1951. Hank Aaron's, I think, was 55. Stan Musial played forever. He played in the 40s and 50s. Ernie Banks started in the 50s.
Yeah.
Willie McCovey. So, no, these guys all played in the late 50s. Mickey Mantle. Sorry, I should have named the Mick. Duke Snyder. So I could keep going if you want, but I'm just saying there were a lot of guys in the late 50s that had 500, 400-plus home runs.
Interesting. Okay, very good.
And none of them were in the Hall of Fame at the time, right? Because it just started up.
Right?
I'm going to jump to another. I'm going to jump to the female version of this sport. The Women's World College World Series has just been seeded on Sunday. They seeded this thing. The regionals are this weekend. It's a 64-team tournament. There are 16 regionals, each with 4 teams. The winners of those will roll up to 8 super regionals, and then the winners of the supers will go to the College World Series. So that's the basic structure. So there are 16 seeded teams. Those are the teams that host the regionals. They're ordered, and so you know which 8 will host the supers if they win their regional.
And what is it? It's not single elimination, is it? Best of 3?
No. This is this wonderful mixed format where they play round robin, a double elimination for the regional, and then at supers they play 2 out of 3, and then for the first round in the College World Series they play double elimination brackets, and then the champions play 2 out of 3. And so it's this.
They rotate. As I remember, they rotate back and forth.
It's an efficiency thing, I think. Anyway, it's just starting. It's a fun sport. It's a fast-paced sport. It's probably my favorite women's sport to watch, and it helps that the University of Texas is good. But notably, guys, 6 of the top 7 teams are from the SEC, and then 3 more from the second 8 are from the SEC. So 9 out of, I think it's only 16 teams in the SEC. 9 out of 16 teams are hosting regionals. They're one of the top 16 teams, but 6 of the top 7. The Nebraska is number 4. Nebraska is the only one of the top 7 who's not an SEC team. So good fun. UCLA is also
probably
in
a
there.
different SEC representation in the college hockey version of this tournament.
Yeah, that's right. We get some of these sports are pretty regionalized. College hockey being one
Baseball
of them.
actually always surprise, or softball, baseball. That one always surprises me how regional, because the history of it, so much of the history of it is Northeast, but
it's weather.
The powerhouse is obviously Texas, the southern sport.
It's weather.
Yeah.
It's a weather thing. The guys can't play in the early spring in the Midwest, in the Northeast. It's just it's totally a weather thing. All right, let's do another quick round. I'm gonna end with a question, a little application of stats for you guys. But let's go one more round of what's caught your eye.
All right, so I'll just go quickly. My son Zach told me a stat yesterday, relates to what Cade was talking about. Shane was talking about with the Hurricanes being 8-0. So I mentioned OKC is 8-0. So on Kalshi, which we all know is a betting site, here are the odds.
It's not a betting site, Eric. It's a prediction market.
Sorry,
it's legal economic rationale for needing to place these investment opportunities, predictions.
All right, there's an investment opportunity on Kalshi with the OKC going undefeated. And anyone want to guess what the odds are on Kalshi? I put it in the sheet, so you probably saw it.
So we're halfway through. We're halfway through.
We're halfway through. So they'd have to win 8 straight games against whoever the finalist is in the Western Conference and whoever, of course, goes into the NBA Finals. So 8 straight games. So what do you think the odds are, according to, if you didn't look, according to Kalshi, that I can make a prediction-style bet that they will go undefeated? And I'll give you a benchmark. 0.8.
Yeah,
let's pretend they were 0.8.
This is what I was going to ask you.
0.8 to the 8th is 16%.
Yeah.
And remember, they're going to play half these games on the road.
So it should be less than that because we don't think they're 0.8 to win a given game.
All right. Well, let me also tell you, hold on a second here. 0.6 raised to the 8th is 1.6%.
Okay. So somewhere between 16 and 1.6. 10 seems something reasonable.
Okay, so you're not far off. I would have guessed it's totally unreasonable. The number's 7%. I thought that was just way too high.
Well, back out the implied game level probability for that and ask yourself, and then get some spreads of games and what have been the spreads. Of course, they're going to be tighter in the next 2 rounds than they have been the last 2. Are they drumming
72%.
72% game level probability would justify a 7% 8-0 run.
Including, by the way, there are road games. That, again, half those games are road. So you have a mixture distribution between half home, half away. And the problem is, I'm not saying they would be, but the minute you go to 50-50, let's say, for any of the road games, you slice that probability way, way down. People have bad intuition, as you know. Like you said, what's the difference? 70%, 50%? That's 30% difference in each of the games. It's a ratio scale. That's absolutely crushes it.
Yeah. Well, does it say something about the expected strength of the Western Conference? Is that are they saying the second and third best teams out there just aren't that second, third, fourth best streams? It must be saying something about that.
Well, San Antonio had I think it's 4-1 or 5-1 record against OKC during the regular season, for whatever that's worth. Now, OKC may not get out of its series because it's 2-2 with Minnesota. You have to believe that whoever comes out of the West is a dominant against whoever comes out of the East. And when I say dominant, at least 80%. Like, I don't see how you can I don't see how in each game, and includes the road ones, because I don't see how you can put OKC more than 60 or even 2/3 against any road game against whether it's let's say it's San Antonio. You can't put them at more than a 2/3 chance to beat San Antonio on the road, which then I have to take all that other probability is only over 6 games, which means I'm going to have to tremendously cut down that probability. I just don't see it. Anyway, it's that you asked me what caught my eye. And remember, I don't know that this is worth anything. Let's just remember, this has never happened in the history of basketball. Never. Despite whatever gap between 1 and 2 you ever want to say was the maximum. The Golden State Warriors at its peak. The Lakers in 71 at its peak. The Boston Celtics at its peak. The Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan at its peak. No one has ever done this.
Yeah, and there really haven't been many that are close, right? I mean, it's not like there have been many 16 and ones either.
Correct. I think the Sixers are the only team to have even gone 16-1. Maybe Golden State did it one year, but you're right. There's not even been a lot of. That's a great point. There's not even been a lot of 16-1s.
Right. That gives you some sense of how unlikely it is that there aren't even those that are not.
And let's even remember, to make it even worse, I think people, when someone say nobody went undefeated, remember, Cade, the early rounds used to be best of 5. You didn't even have to win 16. It was less, and you still didn't do it.
Right. Okay, well, that adds some spice to the playoffs, and it would be a heck of a way for the Thunder to repeat. I mean, to do it that way.
I think you would agree with this. If they happen to do it, and then I'd love to hear. I guess you said you had a question at the end. If they do this, that does put them into a special category. This, in addition to the fact that they'll have won back-to-back, in addition, we've talked about this, they've had the greatest point differential per game the last 2 seasons. Like these are from that simple metric. This is the top 2 seasons in the history of the NBA. If they go ahead and also go undefeated in the playoffs, I'm not trying to present them as the 90 Bulls or the Celtics or Showtime, but this starts to put them in a special category.
Yeah. So Eric, if we're going to start throwing around that margin, given how much tanking and how weak the bottom of the league has been, we probably need to norm that margin for era, right? In some sense. That's fair. Okay. My last, what caught my eye comes from a listener question down here in Central Texas about, you'll like this, Eric. This is completely up your alley. You're the perfect person on this podcast to ask. You run a golf tournament, and you don't trust the handicaps that the golfers put in. Okay. It's not a big serious tournament, so you have discretion to assess handicaps in any way you want, and you believe that it's important to observe the players playing the course that you are hosting the tournament on, and so you're going to use data from the tournament, within the tournament they're actually playing to win. You're going to use some subset of that data to establish the handicap.
So I don't get to use other tournaments, just this, what happened here.
You don't believe any cards that they reported from other tournaments. You're just skeptical. Your golfer's skeptical about handicaps. Yeah. And so plus maybe you have a unique course. So you're just going to use something about you're going to play one round, 18 holes. So basically it come down to a simple question. What subset, how many holes do you want to use to establish the handicap, and then apply it to the remaining holes?
Yeah. So the answer is, I'm going to use, matter of fact, I'll give an answer, and maybe this is not what you were thinking I was going to say. I'm going to relate it to your comment on tanking. I'm going to look at every hole that they had every incentive to play at their best ability, which means there was a legitimate probability for them to win the tournament, or they had to play best, but let's say it's match play, whatever it happens to be. I'm going to use all of those holes for which they should try to play their peak performance. That's what I'm going to use. Again, I'm assuming, but maybe I've read your question wrong. They're trying to hide their true strength on the other holes.
No, well, they're trying to win the tournament. And so you have the challenge of, you're going to conduct the tournament, you're going to award a winner, but you want to adjust for their skills. You want to try to put everyone on the same playing field. So you have to declare a winner at the end of the day based on the 18 holes they played. But you're going to use some subset of them.
No, but here's the thing. If someone knew this, so let's imagine I said 18 holes. Let's say it's a 72-hole tournament for a second. Let's suppose I said 18 holes, okay? And I'm Scotty Scheffler. I might have some incentive to dump in those first 18 holes. Depends the percentage handicap.
Eric, we're only going to play 18 holes. So you're conducting a one-day tournament.
Oh, all right. You didn't say that.
Well, that's what you got. And also, we're not going to announce ahead of time which holes, because of course people would game it. Okay, so we get to, after the fact, by some method, choose unannounced holes.
All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you an answer. I don't, all right, this is what I'm going to say, and I'll tell you the principle by which I'm saying it. 50-50, and let me say why. I'm going to maximize power on both split samples. I'm going to get the best estimate possible of your handicap, and I'm going to better get the best estimate possible of your performance, and so I'm going to do 9 and 9. That's what my gut tells me to do if I only have 18.
Well, so that was my instinct as well, and so I'm glad to hear you say that. I wonder how the golfers would feel about having the tournament essentially reduced to a 9-hole. You're basically turning the tournament down to a 9-hole tournament.
I know, but I also want to get fair handicap estimates too.
Exactly. So, this person, this comes from Susan Skaggs, a listener here in Austin, and she runs tournaments, and she does a 6-hole handicap, randomly selected.
That would have been my other number, would have been 6, because I want more for the performance. I'm willing to take a little more error. And by the way, you know what we're going to do? I'm going to tweet at him. This is a Mark Brody question, if there ever was a Mark Brody question. I'm not saying he has an answer to it, but he seems really smart to me, and he was just on last week. If we tweet at him, I think he's going to give us some sort of answer. I'd love to hear his answer. How about that? But 9 and 9 and 6 and 12 were the 2 numbers that I would have said.
Well, those also are the most mathematically simple to do as well, which is not nothing.
Man.
Well, it's not nothing. We want practical and implementable. All right, why don't we wrap it there then? On behalf of the whole team, Adi Wyner in absentia, Shane Jensen, who slipped away here at the very end, Eric Bradlow, who's been here for the whole show. This has been Cade Massey. Big thanks to Dion Simpkins making this thing happen. This might possibly be Dion's last live show after God knows 600, 500 plus episodes, which I'm going to jump out of a window after this show is over and protest. But Dion Simpkins can't say enough for the man and what he's done for the show over the years. For Marissa Reyna, our producer, and Dee Patel, the boss lady, thank you guys. And for you guys, the listeners, thanks for being with us. Come back and join us next time. Between now and then, enjoy your sports.